The war for Vega Prime had turned the skies into a burning storm. Human ships, once proud and shining symbols of strength, now floated in orbit like broken bones scattered across a dark sea. The air crackled with static from constant radio distress calls, and the stars themselves seemed dimmed by the endless flashes of plasma fire. Every second, another human cruiser went dark on the radar, consumed by the enemy's relentless assault. Captain Rylan Cross stood on the bridge of the USS Dauntless, watching the chaos unfold across the holographic display. Red markers covered the screen, each one a fallen ship, a fallen friend. Only 30 ships remained from the 200 that had started this campaign. They were surrounded by over 1,000 alien warships belonging to the Zerath Dominion, an empire so vast that it stretched across half the known galaxy. The crew around Rylan moved with grim silence, their faces pale under the flickering lights. The ship trembled with each distant explosion. "We can't hold them much longer, Captain," said Lieutenant Mara Hale, her voice steady but her hands trembling. "Shields at 20%. Weapons overheating. Engines—" She stopped when another blast shook the deck and the room went dark for a heartbeat. Emergency lights flickered on, painting everything red. Rylan didn't flinch. He had seen worse. He had survived the fall of Neptune Base, the burning of Titan Station, and the evacuation of Mars. But even his calm couldn't hide the truth. They were losing. Humanity was losing. The Zerath Dominion had come without warning 3 years ago. At first they spoke of peace and diplomacy. Within months they unleashed their fleets upon the human colonies, burning entire worlds to ash. They called humans the wild seed, a corrupted offshoot that had forgotten its origins. No one knew what that meant and no one cared. All humanity knew was that they had to fight back. But the Zerath were older, stronger, and frighteningly united under one leader, a being known as the alien Queen Serathis. She was said to be thousands of years old, a creature of beauty and terror, a mind so vast that it could command entire fleets with a single thought. Rylan had never seen her. Few humans had, but that changed when her summons arrived. It came as a direct transmission, not through coded messages or ambassadors, but as a voice. A woman's voice, calm and resonant, speaking perfect English. "Captain Rylan Cross," it said, "you have fought bravely for your kind. Come to me and we will end this war." The bridge fell silent when they heard it. Some thought it was a trick. Others believed it was surrender. Rylan simply stood there, the voice echoing in his mind. He didn't know why, but he felt something in her tone, something that wasn't hatred, something almost human. Against every order and every instinct, he answered the call. The Dauntless changed course and descended toward the Zerath homeworld, escorted by a fleet of alien fighters shaped like silver wings. The journey through the planet's atmosphere was like falling through liquid glass. Lightning flashed in colors Rylan had never seen. Fast-floating cities hung above oceans of molten metal, and towers of bone and crystal reached into the clouds. It was a world both alive and artificial, beautiful and horrifying all at once. They landed on a platform that glowed with energy. Waiting for them was a procession of alien guards, tall, armored, their movements sharp and precise. Rylan and 2 of his officers followed them through vast corridors that pulsed with living light. The walls breathed softly, as if the whole palace were a living creature. Finally, they entered a massive hall where the air shimmered with heat and sound. At the far end, upon a floating throne of black stone, sat the alien queen. Rylan froze. No description had ever captured her truth. She was immense. Her body a mix of silver and deep blue, her skin patterned like the surface of a nebula. 6 golden eyes glowed from her elegant face, and her long, serpentine limbs moved with slow grace. Yet despite her alien form, there was something strangely familiar in the curve of her mouth and the tilt of her head. When she spoke, her voice was soft, filled with an emotion Rylan hadn't expected. "Human," she said. "You came sooner than I expected." Rylan met her gaze, forcing his voice to remain steady. "You called for me, I came. What do you want from us?" The queen rose slightly, and the entire hall seemed to respond to her movement. "I want to stop the war," she said. "But before I can, you must understand what this war truly is. You must know the truth about your kind and mine." Rylan frowned. "What truth?" Without answering, the queen lifted one of her many arms. In her hand appeared a sphere of light, a crystalline orb swirling with shifting images. As she held it forward, the air filled with a soft hum, and the space before them rippled like water. Then the images began to form. Rylan saw a planet, blue oceans, green forests, white clouds, Earth. But it was not Earth as he knew it. There were no cities, no satellites, no scars of war. The sky shimmered with the light of strange ships descending from above, sleek and organic, their surfaces alive with energy. They were Zerath vessels, there was no doubt. Ryland's eyes widened. "That's impossible," he whispered. The Queen's gaze did not waver. "Long before your recorded history, my people came to this world. It was the cradle we used to preserve what was left of our kind after the Great Collapse. We altered its surface, seeded it with life, and left behind a fragment of ourselves, our DNA, our spirit. When the galaxy burned, we hid among the stars. Your ancestors were not born of that planet's soil. They were born of us." Ryland took a step back, his mind racing. "You're saying humanity came from the Zerath? That we're your descendants?" The Queen inclined her head. "Not merely descendants, our forgotten kin. You were abandoned when our empire fell. We thought your line lost, but you survived, you grew. You built worlds. You learned to fight. And now you return to us, wielding fire and defiance, not knowing who you are." Her words fell heavy in the silence. Ryland could feel his officers shifting behind him, their disbelief turning into something colder, fear. He shook his head. "No, that's a lie. Humans evolved on Earth. We have fossils, history, science." The Queen interrupted softly. "Do you truly believe your rise from the void was natural? That your rapid growth, your hunger for the stars came from nowhere? You are like us because you are us. The same fire that drives the Zerath burns in your blood." Ryland's heart pounded. Part of him wanted to deny it, to call it propaganda, a psychological trick meant to break human resistance. But deep inside, a part of him recognized the weight in her voice. It was not pride or arrogance. It was sorrow. "Why tell me this?" he asked quietly. "Why now, after all this bloodshed?" The Queen's 6 eyes dimmed slightly like fading suns. "Because the war must end. My people see you as invaders, as lost children who turned savage. But I see something different. You are what we once were, raw, determined, unyielding. I summoned you because I wish to stop what my generals cannot. The Dominion will destroy itself if this continues. But to end the war, you must believe what I have shown you. You must carry the truth back to your people." Ryland stared at her, torn between rage and confusion. "You expect me to convince humanity that we're the offspring of our enemies? That we've been killing our own ancestors?" She nodded slowly. "If you do not, there will be no ancestors left to remember either of us." The hall went quiet again. Ryland felt the weight of 1,000 years pressing on his chest. Around them, the air shimmered with strange light and the orb in her hand faded into dust. For a long moment the two stood facing each other, soldier and queen, human and alien, enemies bound by something older than war. Finally, Ryland lowered his gaze. "If what you say is true, then everything we've fought for, everything we've lost." His voice broke for the first time. "All of it was for nothing." The Queen's voice was barely a whisper. "Not for nothing, Captain. For remembrance. The fire in you proves that the Zerath spirit survives. But now it is time for that fire to heal, not burn." As he left the throne room, escorted back toward his ship, Ryland could still hear her final words echoing in his mind. "You are our lost children." He didn't know if it was truth or manipulation, but as he looked up into the sky, where fleets waited to destroy each other, he couldn't shake the feeling that something in the universe had shifted. For the first time in years of war, Ryland Cross felt something he thought he'd lost forever: doubt. And somewhere beneath that doubt, buried deep beneath the scars of battle, flickered a fragile spark of hope. Captain Ryland Cross returned to the USS Dauntless with a silence heavier than the ship's hull. His crew waited for answers, but he had none that could be easily spoken. The alien queen's words still echoed in his mind like thunder. "You are our lost children." The truth, if it truly was the truth, had broken something deep inside him. He sat in his command chair and looked through the viewport at the stars of Vega Prime, each one burning with the fire of war. All around, human ships floated in defensive formation, battered, scarred, and tired. The great war that had burned across 3 star systems had brought them all here, for what would surely be the final battle. Lieutenant Hale approached, her face pale. "Captain, the fleet is regrouping. The Dominion ships are forming a siege line. If they attack again, we won't last 10 minutes. Rylan nodded but said nothing at first. He watched as hundreds of red lights appeared on the tactical display, the enemy moving into position. "Prepare defensive shields," he said finally, "and ready the Iron Dawn contingency." The mention of Iron Dawn made everyone freeze. It was humanity's final weapon, a desperate last gamble built into the dying heart of Vega Prime's star. Buried deep within it was a chain of fusion detonators and a gravitational trigger that would cause the star to collapse and then explode, wiping out everything within 5 light hours. It was a weapon of total annihilation, designed to end the war in one final flash. It would destroy the Zerath fleet and every human ship still fighting. "Sir," Hale whispered, "if we activate Iron Dawn, no one survives." "I know," Rylan said softly, "but if we don't, there won't be anyone left to survive anyway." Hours passed in uneasy silence. The Dominion fleet grew closer, massive battleships darkening the edge of the star's light. Every vessel was alive with energy, a swarm of blue and silver that seemed endless. Humanity's 30 remaining ships looked like insects by comparison. Yet they did not retreat. They had come too far to run now. As the fleets prepared, the communications console came alive again with a signal, an incoming transmission from the Zerath Queen herself. The bridge went still as her image appeared before them, projected in shimmering light. She looked different now, worn, almost sorrowful. "Captain Cross," she said quietly, "you must not ignite your star. If you do, you will destroy not only us, but the very systems that sustain life for generations to come. The radiation will poison 5 sectors. Millions of innocents will die." Rylan rose slowly. "You think I want that? You think I want to kill billions? You've already destroyed our worlds. You left Earth in ruins. You burned Mars to dust. Why should I believe a word you say?" The Queen's many eyes glowed faintly. "Because I have nothing left to gain from lies. You saw the truth, Captain. You know it now. You are Zerath by blood, human by will. You are the bridge between us. Do not let vengeance destroy what little remains of both our races." Her voice faltered, and Rylan could almost sense something like grief in her tone. "I offer you a ceasefire," she said. "Let us meet once more and find another way." Rylan hesitated. The room seemed to shrink around him. The weight of billions rested on his decision. He turned to Hale and his officers, seeing the pain and exhaustion in their eyes. "If this is a trick," one muttered, "it'll be our last." "I know," Rylan replied. "But if it isn't, it might be our only chance." Before he could respond to the Queen, an explosion ripped through the silence. The entire Dauntless shook violently. "Enemy ships opening fire!" shouted Hale. "They've begun the assault." Outside, the darkness erupted in light. Thousands of Zerath ships unleashed their fury in unison. The space around Vega Prime became a storm of plasma and energy. Human vessels returned fire with everything they had: railguns, plasma torpedoes, and nuclear bursts that lit the void like lightning. The Dauntless dove through the chaos, weaving between wreckage and enemy blasts. "Keep firing," Rylan shouted. "All power to forward shields." The bridge trembled as a direct hit tore across their starboard side. Sparks flew from the control panels. The air smelled of burning metal. Hale grabbed onto the railing, shouting over the alarms. "We've lost engine control. Shield grid failing." Rylan clenched his fists. "Divert auxiliary power. Keep the railguns online." Through the smoke and chaos, the Queen's voice came through the comms again, distorted and filled with static. "Captain Cross, look to your star." Her words made no sense at first. Then the science officer cried out, "Captain, the star!" "Something's happening to Vega Prime." Rylan turned toward the main viewport. The dying sun that had burned weakly for centuries was suddenly pulsing, its light flickering, expanding, and contracting like a heartbeat. "It's not the Iron Dawn," the officer said. "It's something else. Some kind of energy release. But it's not ours." A bright wave erupted from the star's surface. For a moment, Rylan thought it was going to explode, but instead, the light formed shapes, hundreds of them, emerging from within the solar flames. "Those are ships," Hale whispered. "Ancient ships." The vessels that came out of the star were unlike anything Rylan had ever seen. Their hulls glowed white with golden veins of energy, and strange markings covered their surfaces. Symbols that matched those found in ancient ruins on Mars, carved into stone thousands of years before humans had ever reached space. The same symbols the Queen had shown him in her vision. The communications console lit up again with a signal, this time from multiple sources. The new ships. A voice echoed through the channel, deep and resonant, older than anything human. "We are the first ones," it said. "We are the fire that seeded both bloodlines. We slept within the heart of the sun until the children of the stars returned." Ryland's crew stared in disbelief. "The Queen did this," Hale said softly. "She woke them." The Queen's voice followed, calm and almost reverent. "These are the ancients who came before us. They are the keepers of our shared beginning. They were hidden within Vega Prime for eons, waiting for the return of their children, you." The first ones turned their weapons on the Zirath Dominion fleet. Streams of golden energy erupted from their ships, cutting through enemy vessels like blades of light. The battle that had seemed hopeless moments ago shifted violently. Human ships regrouped beside the newcomers, forming a fragile alliance of the old and the new. Ryland could feel the tide changing, but the enemy was far from defeated. The Zirath High Lords, furious and desperate, unleashed their final weapon. A planet cracker, a monstrous ship large enough to split Vega Prime itself. Its core began to glow, preparing to release a burst that would tear the system apart. Ryland knew what that meant. If it fired, the first ones, the Queen and humanity, would all be gone. "All ships," he ordered, "focus fire on that weapon. We stop it here or there is no tomorrow." The Dauntless surged forward, engines screaming, every gun blazing. Around it, human and ancient ships poured their fire into the massive weapon. But it wasn't enough. The planet cracker's shields held, its core building energy faster than anyone could destroy it. Ryland gritted his teeth. "Prepare the Dauntless for ramming speed." Hale turned toward him, eyes wide with horror. "Sir, that's suicide." "Maybe," he said quietly, "but it's the only way." He locked the controls and steered the ship straight toward the glowing heart of the weapon. Alarm screamed. Flames tore through the corridors. His crew shouted for him to stop, but he was already past fear. "If humanity was born of stars," he whispered, "then we end as one." The Dauntless struck the planet cracker's core in a burst of white light. The explosion was like a new sun being born. The shockwave tore through the Dominion fleet, shattering ships into dust. The glare blinded every sensor, every camera, every eye. When the light faded, the Dauntless was gone. The planet cracker was nothing but a burning husk, and the battle was over. The surviving Zarath ships, leaderless and broken, began to drift away. The first one's ships glowed softly, circling the remains of the human fleet like guardians watching over their descendants. The Queen's image appeared once more, her voice trembling with sorrow. "He chose to believe," she said quietly. "Humanity remembers." The bridge of the Dauntless no longer existed, but the name Ryland Cross would echo across the galaxy. His sacrifice had united two species that had spent centuries apart. The war that began in hatred had ended in understanding. For the first time in generations, there was silence in the stars. And in that silence, hope was reborn. The light that followed the destruction of the planet cracker faded slowly, leaving behind a silence so deep that even the hum of engines seemed afraid to break it. What had once been the heart of a battlefield was now a graveyard of twisted metal and drifting debris. The Dauntless was gone, reduced to fragments of glowing dust scattered among the stars. Yet through the emptiness, something still moved. The ships of the first ones, their golden hulls gleaming faintly against the fading light. Around them drifted the surviving human vessels, broken but alive, and beyond them floated the shattered remnants of the Zarath fleet. The war that had burned for 3 long years was over. Not with victory or surrender, but with sacrifice. From the bridge of her own wounded flagship, Queen Serathis watched the wreckage with her 6 golden eyes dimmed in sorrow. Her throne chamber was half destroyed. The walls cracked, the power flickering, but she sat there unmoving, her gaze fixed on the stars. "He believed," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The human chose to believe. For centuries, her kind had told stories of the lost bloodline, the wild seed cast into the void, but none had truly believed they still lived. Ryland Cross had proved them wrong, not by words but by his actions. His death had broken the chains of hate more completely than any speech ever could. Far away, on one of the surviving human ships, the Endeavor, Lieutenant Mara Hale sat staring at the empty space where the Dauntless had vanished. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears, her hands trembling as she held Ryland's captain insignia, which she had taken from the wreckage of a lifeboat that had been blown free before the final explosion. She whispered to herself, "He did it. He really did it." Around her, the crew worked in stunned silence, trying to make sense of what they had just witnessed. The comms officer suddenly turned from his console. "Captain Hale," he said, because she was captain now, whether she wanted it or not. "We're receiving a transmission from the Zerath flagship. It's the Queen." Hale hesitated, then nodded. The image that appeared on the main screen was not what she expected. Serathis looked human, not in form but in spirit. Her expression carried a quiet grief, a deep understanding that crossed every barrier between species. "To the humans of Vega Prime," the Queen said, her voice echoing softly. "The war is over. Your leader has given his life for peace. I order all Zerath forces to cease fire and stand down immediately. Any who disobey will face exile." Behind her, other Zerath commanders appeared on the broadcast, their faces showing disbelief and anger, but none dared defy her. The Endeavor's crew watched in stunned silence as Zerath ships began to retreat, their weapons powering down one by one. The stars grew calm again, the fires of battle dimming into soft trails of smoke and dust. Hale's throat tightened. "He stopped it," she said softly. He actually stopped it. Across the galaxy, the news spread like light through darkness. Human outposts that had been cut off for years received the message, "The war is over." On distant colonies, families who had long feared the end of everything fell to their knees, crying and laughing at once. Even on ruined Earth, where the sky was still scarred by orbital bombardment, people looked up and saw hope for the first time in generations. In the days that followed, human and Zerath engineers began to rescue survivors from wrecked ships, working together for the first time. It was awkward, filled with suspicion and uneasy silence, but slowly that silence began to break. Hale met the Queen face to face on the ruins of Vega Station, a neutral ground floating in orbit. The air there was thin, the station half dead, but it served its purpose. Serathis stood tall and regal, her armor cracked, her movement slower now, like someone carrying centuries of weight. Hale faced her with her chin raised. "You took everything from us," she said, voice shaking. "You burned our homes, killed our people, and now you talk of peace." "Why should I trust you?" The Queen did not argue. Instead, she held out her hand, the same hand that had once held the orb showing humanity's true origin. "Because your captain trusted me," she said simply, "and because I do not want to see the stars burn again." Hale stared at her for a long time, then slowly, reluctantly took her hand. That single moment, one human and one Zerath, standing among the ruins, was later called the first contact of peace. It became the foundation of what would one day be known as the Union of the Lost Suns. In the months that followed, ships once built for war carried supplies instead of weapons. Engineers rebuilt destroyed colonies. Scientists from both races shared knowledge freely, and for the first time humans began to understand the vast history that had been hidden from them. The first ones, those ancient beings who had awoken within Vega Prime, watched from afar, never interfering, only guiding when needed. They spoke rarely, but when they did, their voices carried across the stars like music. "You are both born of the same light," they said. "Do not forget it again." Humanity listened. So did the Zerath. The Queen traveled to Earth herself one day against the warnings of her council. The planet was still scarred and hollow, but when she stepped onto its soil, the people gathered, staring in awe. She knelt in the ruins of an old city and placed her clawed hand on the ground. "This world still remembers," she whispered. "It remembers the seed we left behind." When she stood again, the human leaders met her with open hands, and in that meeting, the first peace treaty between the two species was signed. They named it the Cross Accord in memory of the man who had given everything for it. Years passed and the galaxy began to heal. The Union of the Lost Suns grew strong, an alliance built not on dominance but on balance. Together, humans and Zerath explored new worlds, repaired old scars, and discovered forgotten relics of the ancient civilization that had birthed them both. They found that their differences were not weaknesses but reflections of the same origin. The Zerath had given humanity their spark, but humanity had returned it as fire. And at the heart of it all, the memory of Rylan Cross lived on, not as a soldier but as a symbol of unity. His story was told to every child born under the twin banners of the Union. They called him the human who remembered the stars. Centuries later, a great city rose from the ashes of Vega Prime, built jointly by human and Zerath architects. In its center stood a monument carved from the remains of the Dauntless, a towering statue of Rylan Cross standing tall with his head raised toward the sky. Beside him was another figure, the alien queen, her 6 eyes carved to shine with gentle light. The two stood together not as enemies, but as equals. Below them an inscription read in both languages, "Born of stars, forged in fire, united in hope." Every year, on the anniversary of the war's end, ships from across the galaxy gathered around Vega Prime to honor the light that had once nearly destroyed them all. They released flares into the void, tiny bursts of gold and white that drifted like souls across the darkness. And among those stars, the first ones watched quietly. "The children have learned," they said to one another. "The circle is whole again." Their great ships faded slowly into the distant reaches of the cosmos, leaving behind the worlds they had once created, now thriving and free. The war that had begun with hatred ended with remembrance, and though the cost had been great, it had given birth to a peace stronger than any empire. As time moved on and centuries became legends, the tale of the alien queen and the human captain was told not as a story of war, but as a lesson that even in the darkest corners of the universe, the light of understanding can rise again. It reminded every new generation that peace is not given. It is built piece by those brave enough to see the enemy not as a monster, but as a mirror. And so the stars remained quiet, the worlds rebuilt, and the union of the lost sons endured, forever guided by the memory of a man who had faced an alien queen and discovered the greatest truth of all, that humanity was never truly alone.